All right, in this lesson, we'll talk about multi-line strings, and as their name would suggest, a multi-line string is simply a string that includes multiple lines or line breaks between the characters. Now, in the official Ruby documentation, a multi-line string is officially called a here document, so you may hear that sometimes, but it really just means a string that consists of many lines. So how do we begin a multi-line string? They begin with the double less than symbol. So I'm going to create a variable here. I'm going to call it words. And I'm going to put two less than signs like this. After that, we follow that up with a short identifier, which basically is a short sequence of characters that marks the beginning of our multi-line string. All the content after our short identifier will be included, including any tabs and new lines. So for example, I'm going to create a shorthand identifier called MLS. So I'm going to do capital MLS. Now this could be whatever you want. This could be any combination of characters. This is basically just the identifier that says I'm beginning a multi-line string. I'm just going to use MLS because those are the beginning letters of that expression, but you can use whatever you'd like here. At this point, I'm going to create a few empty lines here, and then I'm going to write MLS again. And again, this can be whatever you want, any combination, but usually the smaller the number of characters, the easier it is to type out, so that's what most people go with. Now, everything between here is going to comprise our multi-line string. So, for example, I can start writing here, and by the way, I don't need quotes. Everything in here can be written without quotes. And keep in mind that everything in here is literal, so things like line breaks will be taken in consideration. Things like tabs will be considered. So for example, here I've created a simple tab. This will be included when I output this multi-line string later. But I can write something like, this will be a multi-line string, line break, when it is output. This editor seems determined to keep pushing my stuff to the beginning of the line, but we can keep tabbing it in. Right here, I'm going to continue. The tabs will also be preserved. Just you watch. Goodbye. And I'm just going to close that gap here. So this is our multi-line string. Now, this is interesting. You know by now that we have the three different methods to output. We have P, we have print, and we have puts. Now, if you remember P is the most literal of the three. It's the one that allows us to debug by seeing things that the other ones don't show us. And remember, one of the caveats of using the P method with a string is that line breaks are going to be rendered with that /n instead of the actual visual line break. So when I execute this, you'll see it'll appear right here, and every time we're supposed to have a line break, we're just going to have this /n character appear. But if we do something like puts or print, we're going to actually see the proper output. So I'm going to remove this and replace it with something like print words. And now you can see we're going to get the completely outputted string. Notice that the tabs here in my first two lines are included. Notice that the line breaks are included as well, including this big gap right here that we created right here in our source code, right up to there. See, all of that's included. Everything that's between that beginning and end is going to be taken literally, and it will be included. And similarly, if I do something like puts words, you're going to see that all of that stuff is going to appear. So that's a quick introduction to multi-line strings. Sometimes they come in handy. Maybe you want to, I don't know, write some kind of poetry variable that includes things over multiple lines, and you don't want to, keep using puts and things like that. That's how you create multi-line strings. Simply begin with those two less than signs followed by a unique identifier, whatever you want to call it. Obviously, just stick to letters. That just makes things simple. Then you write whatever you want and conclude with that same sequence of letters, and that creates a multi-line string or a here document in Ruby.